Welcome to the Meltzone podcast from July 12th, 2020. This is episode 36. I'm Tom.
And I'm Stefan. And after quite a while of no podcast, we have some interesting topics for you. 3D printed food once again. Lots of news from Asia. We talk about, TCT Asia that has been last week, and if we are going to attend Formnext this year, that is still not cancelled yet. Then Creality claims to have shipped over 500,000 printers in 1 month. That is more than they shipped all last year, which is really interesting. More Creality news. We just discuss a patent that seemed to have popped up that includes leveling a 3D printer using strain gauges, and that is exactly what the CR6SE does. And if we think that could influence like sales of that machine in Europe, and if even other printers like the Ultimaker or the Smart Effector from Duet could actually infringe that patent.
Yeah, and if you do manage to grab one of those printers, how do you then tune it in? We covered two approaches to a assisted or semi-automated slicer settings tuning. And we also cover some of your questions. So we talk about a new approach of doing 3D printed supports that are easy to remove, but do not require a dual extruder setup. We cover filament recycling, whether it's PLA, PETG, and whether it makes sense to actually ship those back to manufacturers for recycling. Where do you learn about metal lathing and milling, two 3D printing channels who are both kind of dabbling into metal work. Stefan has a lot to say about that. And lastly, can the mini print ASA safely? And it might even be able to print polycarbonate. So we discussed that as well. It is good to be back. It's been a hot minute, man.
Yeah. Times are pretty busy at the moment. I'm still happy to see that you still look sane after your like video marathon for the last five weeks. Yeah, your hair has
need a haircut though.
Yeah, I also definitely need a haircut.
So do you, yeah.
Thanks.
I mean, I know how you look with a fresh haircut usually, and you don't look like that right now. Yeah. So we've both been pretty busy. I mean, for me, the massive beginner video series, man, so many videos, so short notice.
Yeah, two videos in a week. I just can't really imagine how much work that's gotta be, scripting everything out and recording everything and cutting everything and pre-releasing them for sponsors and stuff like that.
So yeah, on the one hand, it's like, okay, these are what I would call easier videos. These are the sort of videos that I was doing at the beginning of when I started my channel, where it's just, okay, something that I already know about and I'm just putting it from my brain into a script. But on the same hand, it's, doing 2 a week, it is still so much more work than doing regular releases. And I've looked at my older videos and it was like 5 shots of B-roll in the entire thing. And now I'm doing like a full script, and like I've had videos where it was 70 shots that I still had to capture. So they've gotten more complex. But yeah, I've gotten comments like, hey, yeah, now we've got sponsors and now you're managing to finally release some videos. And I'm like, yeah, well, hold on there for a second. First of all, again, those are easy videos. And also, I've not had a life for like the last 1.5 months. So, I mean, we've not been doing podcasts. I've barely managed to do some laundry every now and then. So it's basically taking a credit from the future me and being like, okay, now it's all done, and now you can catch up on everything else that you've not been doing while producing those videos. So, yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, so
it's been an experience. Let's put it that way. And people are liking them.
Will you continue to go back to your normal schedule trying to have like one video a week, or at least, well, one every 2 weeks?
Well, one fully produced video a week is already like hitting it pretty hard.
Yeah.
If it's like a project or a review or something along those lines, it is kind of hard to do it within 1 week and to still have a life.
Yeah.
I think that's the balance you have to find somewhere. So yeah, right now I'm taking a bit of a break, quote unquote, and yeah, the next one's going to be in 10 days from now, roughly.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm planning for every 2 weeks, and if something comes up, I'm gonna have the flexibility to do, an extra one.
That sounds pretty good. So yeah, at least you're taking a little bit time off, because after such a insane amount of work, it's good to do something differently.
Yeah, I mean, right at the moment the last video got released, I just went right into the next bit of work, which was putting up drywall in my bathroom, doing a new ceiling, kind of similar to what you've been up to.
Yeah, well, not really drywall yet, but yeah, the new roof is above my head. We still don't have any shingles up there, and also our solar panels are still missing. We have some delay in the workforce, or some problems with the workforce. I hope that, well, next week we finally have new shingles on our roof. The solar panels are there, and I can start putting the electrics in to hopefully also kind of in a timely manner install the solar system to the grid, because I'm really looking forward to use my own locally produced electrons on my roof.
Yeah, it is pretty satisfying, especially if you have like real-time tracking and all that. It does get quite addictive. Actually, I should put my phone into flight mode. It does get really addictive just watching. Okay, today I've done this percentage of just my own power, and you get the predictions of, okay, in the morning you should probably turn on your washer, and then if you get the dryer in right after that, you can do that. But if you start it at night, or next morning it's going to be cloudy, so maybe don't use too much it's nice. It's addictive, and when you can automate that sort of stuff,
I really
a lot of fun.
I really need to dive into that as soon as everything is installed right here, because since we don't have a battery for our solar system in here installed yet, because I don't know if it really makes sense, and they are quite expensive. I am looking forward. Sorry. To put some intelligence into the system, to have a couple of things automated, some smart sockets on the wall to start the washer and things like that, or just a panel that tells you, okay, if you need to do the laundry, do it this morning, because later the weather's going to be worse and stuff like that. I don't know what already exists in that direction, but I think with you I have a pretty good person to talk to get some hints.
Yeah, we are running on different systems. So I'm on SMA. Yeah. You're on Formnext, which is probably the better company to pick, but I'm not locked into SMA. They're not cross compatible. But yeah, it's a lot of that is actually already out there. So what my system can do is you get the Idiomux smart plugs. And the it's not the inverter itself, it's the home manager, which is like a smart meter you put in. That can actually control those Wi-Fi plugs directly. Okay. And you can then program in, if there's surplus solar energy available, then always turn it on, or pick the best 3 hours in every day. Or pick the best 3 hours in this time slot that it can run, and it needs to be at least 2 hours in one stretch, like with a washer. Okay. You basically turn on the washer, you start the cycle, and then you hit the smart plug and turn it off again. And then the solar system turns that smart plug on, and the washer will finish its cycle. Yeah. It's a bit janky still, but yeah, and there are actually very expensive washers that you can get that directly integrate that sort of connectivity. But it's like, dude, the power or the money you save over the time, it's not worth paying like $400 extra for a washer. Sorry, no.
I don't really know how much we're gonna use that, because that kind of restricts, well, your normal behavior a little bit, but well, at least you can store your surplus energy in your battery, but my surplus energy is just, well, sold to the grid at
Yeah.
not a lot of
9.3
9 point
cents a
something
kilowatt hour?
like
Yeah.
9 cents a kilowatt hour. And when I need to buy it back from the grid, I pay like 32 cents per kilowatt hour. So
Damn.
it is a good idea to kind of plan a couple of, well,
Yeah.
electrically intensive tasks to certain times of the day when the sun is out.
I mean, the automation is nice and all,
Yeah.
but what it really works well for is stuff that can just run like the EV charger, where it's just plugged in all day and you don't really need it to charge at a certain time, or you, like in the washer, you don't really need it to charge right then and there. You just have it plugged in, and whenever it's a good time, it uses it. But for stuff like washer, dishwasher, those energy intensive stuff, it's just, okay, you look outside, if the sun's out, you can start it. And that's really what it comes down to.
I need
sorry if my audio is clipping. Windows is acting up.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. There's nothing I can do about that.
I need to convince my wife that it's worth the effort, but yeah, we'll see. Well, at least in our home with my parents, we had like Nachtstrom.
Yeah.
The
It's not something that's common anymore.
It's not that common anymore. So
dual tariff.
yeah. So in the 70s, when the house was built, they put in electric heaters everywhere because it was during the time of the oil crisis. And at that time, you always had, well, those 2 meters. One was for the normal tariff and one was for the discounted tariff at night when all of the nuclear power plants had surplus energy that was sold to you at a cheaper price. And so things like the washer or, well, laundry and or dishwasher, they were always started at night because automatically when the signal came through the grid, some relays were switched on and then everything started.
So home automation in the 70s.
Home automation.
That they were doing that.
Yeah. Well, my dad's an electrician, so he put something in there. It's probably really crude, but it was working.
Yeah. Hopefully in a month or two, I'll also get my not dual tariff, but like smart tariff meter. So I don't know if I talked about this on the podcast before, but in the UK, there's Octopus Energy. And here there's Avatar, which is written AWATTAR, so not like the movie, but like Watt. And basically, because the price for energy that your supplier pays changes every hour, they can adjust your tariff on an hourly basis as well. So you get a preview for the coming day. And it's like, okay, in the morning it's very expensive, and at night it's very expensive, and in between that, when there's high sun and high wind and little consumption, maybe you even get down to like -9 cents per kilowatt hour that you pay plus grid fees, which is about 20 cents here. So instead of paying 25 cents, you pay like 12.
Okay.
So that's pretty nice, and of course it can tie into home automation stuff. So just more stuff to manage, more stuff to play around with.
Yeah,
and hopefully save a buck or two.
Probably not really worth the time you put into that, but it's just a fun project, and for me, I think it's a good feeling using the energy that you really produce on your own roof.
Yeah. Have you looked into the Zoe leasing thing they're doing now?
Yes, I have. I haven't contacted the guy in Berlin. I am still postponing that to later this year when our roof renovation is finished. But I'm still looking into buying an EV maybe later this year or next year.
There are new dealerships that are doing similar deals.
Okay.
So it's not just that one that it's popping up all over the place. So for you guys listening or watching, in Germany there is there's been an incentive for buying a new EV or leasing one of a total of 6,100 euros that you get basically paid out in cash, more or less. And recently, as part of a stimulus package, it's been increased to 9,100 euros. So what some Peugeot, not Peugeot, I'm getting Peugeot. What some Renault dealerships have been doing is, because the Zoe is a relatively cheap car and they've got relatively cheap lease rates already, they've been putting together lease packages where it's like you get the car for free. Essentially, you don't pay a deposit up front, you don't pay monthly lease rates, or at least it comes down to zero because your incentive ends up being exactly what they would charge you. So basically, you can drive a Renault Zoe for free for 2 years, which is pretty amazing. I mean, why not make use of that?
Yeah. And the Zoe is, even though it's a small car, it is pretty nice. We had an intern in my department, and she was driving a Zoe for years now, and her whole family had more Zoes, and they were really happy with it. So yeah, they have quite a lot of experience.
It's been updated quite a bit, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't look as bad anymore as it used to look earlier.
I think the originals looked okay.
Yeah.
At least for the time. Like you gotta consider this is now a 8-year-old, 10-year-old design, basically, the old Zoe.
Yeah. Something like that.
So yeah.
But you got your new EV now.
Nah.
No, you don't. You don't.
Nah. So the E208 is made in Tvrna, Slovakia, Slovenia. I can never remember. And that plant has been shut down for a bit over, I think, almost 2 months. And they're ramping up production now. You can actually look at the registration numbers based on how many of the incentive packages were actually requested. And I think there's been like 40 of my model E208s that have been registered so far. So that's basically, they don't exist yet. So yeah, I'll have to see. Hopefully in the next few months I'll finally get that.
Okay. So you're still driving your old EV?
No, that's gone. That's been sold
that's
to the
gone.
dealer.
Okay, so you're currently on petrol again.
I'm on diesel, yeah.
Diesel.
Pains me to start up that engine every time, but it is what it is.
It is what it is, yeah.
Yeah. Should we keep talking about some more hippie green left stuff?
Definitely.
We've now got 3D printed steaks and salmon, and of course they're completely vegan and sustainable and whatever. By the way, that's not in a sarcastic manner. Like, shout out vegans for actually giving a. Do we have an explicit tag on this podcast? I don't think we do.
No.
Yeah. I think that the hardcore vegans are actually that they're onto something. I'm not strong enough to do it full yet, but I like myself a good tofu every now and then.
Yeah, well, if it's well prepared, why not?
Yeah.
Have you? Well, before we talk about that, have you ever tried one of these Impossible meat burger things?
I've not had the actual Impossible burger yet. I hear in the States that we can actually get them at every McDonald's or Burger King.
Yeah, I think Burger King sells them.
Yeah, you can get like every burger as a vegan option, which is pretty nice.
Yeah.
I've tried a couple, I don't want to say knockoff versions, but Aldi has like the Beyond Burger.
Yeah.
Which there's something in there that just tastes and smells horrible. It works if you just use it for like spaghetti sauce, if you do like a bolognese sort of thing. But as a burger patty, nah, can't do it. I'd rather just not have a burger-like thing instead of eating that. I think you've tried the Impossible, right?
I'm not sure if it was
Lidl.
Yeah, I got it at Lidl quite a while ago. I don't know. I don't remember anymore if it was the Impossible.
The Impossible. Yeah. I think that was it. Yeah.
It was okay. It was okay on a burger where you put sauce and other condiments on there.
Okay.
Just eating it on its own, of course it has a different taste as meat, but it was quite a nice alternative. And I don't know. I think I would buy more of it if it would be more common around here. But yeah, it's always the thing. Well, I don't buy supermarket meat. We have really good butchers around right here who have locally produced, sorry for the word, slaughtered meat. It costs 3 times.
It is what it is, man.
It costs 3 times the price as normal ones. But yeah, I just like having a good steak from time to time.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I've pretty much cut out pork and beef from the stuff I actually buy. Like if I'm with friends and we're out grilling or something, yeah, of course I'll eat some pork. But I'm basically beef and pork is just not something I buy anymore.
So just chicken or 3D printed salmon or 3D printed steak in the future.
Yeah. So let's start with the 3D printed steak, because I think that's a bit older. Well, a few days older story. So, and I think the one that's actually more down to something that can happen. And both of these stories are like riding that edge really hard of what's actually real and what's fake in these pictures they're showing. So they're both, I think the big thing for both of those is they're doing structure. So they've got 2 different base materials that they're basically extruding as a paste in paste extruders. And in the steak, you can actually see they've got cartridges labeled fat, blood, and then I think the one to the right is meat. That's just cut off in that picture, but they're actually adding texture to the muscle. There we go. Fat, blood, and muscle. So they're trying to add a bit of texture, because that's something that you don't really get with like a minced meat. That's like soy based or whatever.
Yep.
And that's something that 3D printing, I guess, can be used for. Like I can see it also just being extruded with a texture. Yeah.
I think we have already talked about that in the last podcast, but one of the things that you could do with such an extruder, if you have you kind of orient the material by the printing process. You can not really simulate like muscle fibers, but at least the material has, or the artificial meat is kind of oriented in your printing direction, which might add a little bit more of the texture you're used to. Of course, the question is always, couldn't you do that at a larger scale in a pretty big extrusion machine? Yeah, maybe. Yeah. But if the 3D printing works out, maybe this could be the reason why a bigger manufacturer decides to invest in a meat extrusion machine, which adds artificial fat and fibers and blood into.
Is there a term for non-meat meat alternatives? Because calling this meat, I think, is doing a bunch of things a disservice. Yeah. Because it's not. It's the way I understand it, this is not actual just minced meat pressed into new shape. This is a vegan alternative.
Yeah.
High in protein, being plant-based, no cholesterol.
Coconut fat. This stuff always reminds me, or even taking a look at the pictures, reminds me of those unlimited long artificial eggs. Yeah.
Yes.
You have on sandwiches.
Oh God.
Why do those slices of eggs on sandwiches usually always look totally the same? Yeah, because they're not real eggs. Well, they have been real eggs, but they were separated before, then extruded into a 1 kilometer long sausage of egg that can then be sliced again. And that's pretty much the same that is happening right here as well.
Well, except that this isn't real animal-based product.
You're right, yeah.
Yeah. What I'm just thinking about, looking at the picture that's like it's made to resemble its meaty counterpart. Yeah. What if you could just, because I see the point with extrusion, but what if you could just do a happy 30th birthday steak that just has the fat areas in that shape?
Well, that's industry 4.0 individualization of products.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could start an online service printing.
Have your kid's face in there or something. I mean, we can go as deep as you want here.
We'll see. It does. Sorry. It does resemble more a piece of meat as the substitutes that we currently see out there. And for many, not choosing those substitutes for eating is also a reason of looks and the texture you have in your mouth and things like that. And maybe we can get just one step closer to really having a perfectly good substitute. The question is always, do we need a perfect substitute for meat that is plant-based? It's just like the similar thing as alcohol-free beer that we have around here, or Weizen beer, wheat beer. Where does this beverage need to taste exactly the same as normal beer, or is it just a different kind of drink?
Yeah, the one thing I was going to bring up is like milk substitutes. I guess not technically called milk, at least here in the EU. So just like not buying beef and pork, I've also switched away from buying milk, as in like actual cattle milk or cow milk. And I actually like the alternatives better. So I get the oat and almond milk from Aldi. And I actually prefer that for just, mixing into cereal. Why can't we just, like, if you look at steak and the salmon we're going to talk about in a second, why can't we just make the dopest, like, the burger patty that doesn't have to resemble beef?
Yeah.
Like, why can't we just focus on that? Just make something that actually tastes and tastes good and has a nice texture, and try not to resemble the real thing. I think that would be a more achievable and maybe even better goal in the end.
Yeah, maybe the reason is because I don't know how many are, still not vegetarians or vegans. And I would guess that's at least 80%.
Germany, it's like 87% or something.
Okay, so there is quite a big market when you try to convince meat eaters to become a meat substitute eater. They're, I don't know, maybe using something that resembles meat might make that step easier.
True. But then again, if you don't get it perfectly right, you enter that uncanny valley where it's like you're expecting beef, but you're not getting it, and then it's like, well, this sucks. This isn't what I wanted, and that's the end of that story.
Yeah. So either you make it really perfect, or you take a step away from the product that you know that it's different, but it still tastes good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uncanny valley. That's a perfect word for that. Yeah.
Again, that's why I actually like the oat milk better than milk, because it's not trying to be milk. It's just something that works better with cereal.
But it still looks the same, kind of the same.
Yeah, it's still a milky white liquid, but I guess that's just what works with cereal.
Yeah,
I don't know.
So, yeah, we'll see when we'll see when that's going to be released in supermarkets, or if it's just some posh restaurants where you can buy that.
We will see. Yeah, hopefully it's not. I'm not going to go there. Okay. So yeah, the other one is the 3D printed salmon, which I don't know if it's the same thing. It's probably very much the same thing, but it's way more obscure in the script. They've got a photo of a piece of salmon under an extruder, which is, I guess, supposed to suggest that this is a printed piece of salmon. But that's a real piece of salmon. Mm-hmm. You can't tell me that's a printed piece. EU-backed AM research project. they really don't have anything to show yet. But I guess it's newsworthy for the reason that, just a few days earlier we saw the steak, and now we get the salmon. But the salmon really, there's nothing to talk about there, right?
Yeah. Well, most popular fish. So when you have meat, why not also fish? We'll see. Would like to try that at some point. I would also be interested to try some artificially grown meat.
Oh, lab meat.
Meat. But that's not lab meat. That's a vegan substitute. What we have been talking about here.
Yes. But can we talk about lab meat for a second? Like taking actual animal cells without the brain and without the suffering, and just growing it in a plastic bag somewhere. Yeah. I think that sounds very attractive.
Yeah.
That's like the same mindset of, grinding up the crickets and putting those into a patty. That also sounds attractive. Yeah. I wouldn't mind that.
I wouldn't I wouldn't mind that either, and I have tried crickets in the past, but that would still involve killing animals. And even though crickets might be a pest from time to time, we still need to kill them, grind them up.
Sure. So I mean, from my perspective, just plastic bag meat. Sounds a lot better on a lot of fronts there. So.
Yeah, we'll see. Gonna try that out maybe at some point in the future. Well, maybe Formlabs is really happening this year. Maybe they have 3D printed.
Oh God! That's an experiment on its own.
Maybe let's just talk about that for a second. So I think the Formnext Expo here in Germany, which is the biggest 3D printing expo in the world. Am I right there? At least one of the biggest ones.
Something along those lines, yeah.
Yeah. I think this is still the only expo. No, sorry. TCT Asia was last week. This week.
So that actually happened as a physical in-person expo?
I am quite sure that happened because I've seen posts of Polymaker during the last couple of days. But at least in, let's say, the Western world, I think Formnext is still the only expo that wasn't canceled so far. And they still have the plan to do that, I think, this year again in November. But I would be quite hesitant to go there, even though I have been there for the last 4 or 5 years. I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, I've posted about this on Twitter briefly, but when I saw that they were announcing, yes, it's going to happen in person. The thing is that they said they were going to have extra precautions and wider aisles and less people there, but it is still a very international audience that's going to come together, and knowing trade shows, it is still going to be crowded, especially around the more popular booths. I don't know. So,
and the thing is that people all over the world come there, so there is a potential risk that you have just somebody in there who, might be contagious.
So if it isn't perfectly obvious, we're talking about this being potentially a new COVID-19 super spread event. Just to be very clear here, if it is not already. I don't know. We'll have to see what the situation is when the show actually happens. Yeah. Like if we're in the middle of wave 2, no way. If they're permitting international guests from areas that are, not keeping it under control right now, I would be way more hesitant to attend than if it was okay, everything's still cool, everything right now, it feels very calm in Germany. We've got this under control, more or less. Right now, I would probably go. Okay. If it was a limited audience, if I'm going to walk the aisles with a mask on, and I think that's if everyone is required to wear one still at that point, which I think they will be, and that would make me feel a bit better about it. But yeah. I don't know. We'll just have to see what exactly they do when it happens, what the situation is. And like people who are just like, oh, dude, it's your job as a journalist to attend and to cover it. I'm like, dude, go explicit word yourself. You're not the one to decide, what I risk my health and the health of the people around me for.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, we'll see. TCT Asia happened. Yeah, I think I just posted the link into the show notes. It happened last week, and it looked quite normal. Let's put it that way. You can see people there without masks and lots of other ones with masks, which looks totally usual for Asia.
Yeah. Also, just the entire social, how do you call it? Just the fact that people are just used to wearing masks in the Asian countries probably helped them a lot in getting it under control from the start. So now they can go back to normal a bit quicker.
Yep. All right.
Yeah. So we shall see.
We shall see. Maybe let's stay in Asia and put that topic right here as the next one on our list. Quite interesting. Well, press release by Creality, I think last week or something like that. Creality claims to have shipped 500,000 printers in April.
May. Close enough.
Sorry, May. Which is an insanely big number. And they're saying that they have shipped 500,000 printers last year, 2019.
In all of 2019.
In all of 2019. Yeah. And in just 1 month in May this year, 2020, they have shipped another 500,000 printers, which is mind-blowing. And I'm
which definitely for that month makes them the biggest 3D printer manufacturer in the world.
Yeah.
If not just with their overall numbers they're already at that spot.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What I have been asking myself, who got all the affiliate money? Because I didn't get it. No, sorry, just kidding.
Well, yeah.
So we have been discussing about that before recording and asked ourselves, okay, have that been backlogged printer that weren't able to be shipped out because most of the Ender printers were out of stock for quite a while at the beginning of this year, and maybe they just figured out how to get their production chain in order again, and in that month they were really able to crank out this big amount of printers, which is insane.
Yeah, so they've also got some numbers in this press release that states how many orders they're receiving. So they're saying in April, they received orders for a total amount of 160,000 3D printers during the first half of the month. So that doesn't quite add up to 500,000 printers in a month. 500,000 printers ordered in a month. That's still 320,000, which is a lot, but it's roughly half as many. So I think what's going on here is just first of all, Asia has been earlier on the entire COVID shutdown and infection curve. So Asia went into a really hard, or China at least, went into a pretty hard shutdown during a while, and then they were able to open back up because they had very few new reported cases. So what I'm seeing here is Creality had orders piling up during that shutdown. They weren't able to produce. They weren't able to get the parts in the amount or in the volume they needed. And then in May, they finally got all the parts in, and they were able to fill all those backlogs. And during that month, they were able to ship all those printers out.
But man, 500,000 printers. I don't have any numbers how many printers Prusa is usually shipping.
Less.
Way less, yeah.
I think it's around 1/10 of that. Well, I'm not going to Google it because that's going to be horrible to for listeners. Yeah. So obviously that is a lot of printers. The question is that just Creality brand printers? Is Creality actually doing OEM work for others too, where it's a white label machine?
Well, I'm not 100% sure because I have seen printers from, I think, SainsSmart and whatever those other companies are called, which like 100% resemble Creality printers and are just called SainsSmart Endo 3 or something like that.
Well, I mean, that there are like Amazon sellers that are just selling. Okay, this is the Shenwen Fing Ender 3. This is the SainsSmart Ender 3. This is the RoboLeaks Ender 3, and it's really just they're reselling it as their brand, and it is just Creality Ender 3.
It would be interesting to know if they really do other white label 3D printers for other companies. I don't know. I just don't know. But I don't know. Well, if they have the production facilities and the capacities, it would make sense to do something like that. But the other printers that you're usually, getting from other companies, I'd say they mostly look distinctively different, and I would almost doubt that they come from the same plant, but it's always hard to say.
I mean, they all look like Ender 3s now.
They all look Ender 3s on the outside, but if you dig deeper, they are definitely manufactured differently. So,
I think this just goes to prove that 3D printing is not dying down during lockdowns. In fact, there is, if anything, there is an uptick in interest in 3D printing, in 3D printed sales, obviously, as well. I've gotten comments on YouTube from people who knew nothing, basically, and they were like, why are you still making videos about basic stuff? Like, nobody cares about 3D printing anymore in this pandemic. Like, nobody's buying printers. Well, we've just been proven wrong.
Yeah.
You've just been proven wrong.
It would be interesting to see if the amount of printers that are sold is dying down in the next months just a little bit, because, during the last months, people often had more spare time. There was the demand, or I think many bought printers for 3D printing personal protective equipment. And if the market is now at least stagnating a little bit, and I even have heard from filament manufacturers that the amount of filament that was sold over the last month has just risen like crazy.
When we've had a PLA shortage.
Yeah.
But on top of that,
there's the question if less PLA was produced due to the pandemic, or if more was sold.
True.
And that maybe both.
Yeah, a lot of things coming together.
Yeah. So, yeah, quite impressive.
For sure. Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see if, in the coming months, people will actually stop buying 3D printers or stop being interested in them because, it costs money. And with unemployment rates in some countries being as high as, 15%, 20% from 1 month to the next, I can see how people would, maybe not invest in a hobby that's, it's going to cost them easily a couple $100, and then you don't know how much in upgrades or in maintenance it's going to add on. We will see.
We will see. All right. Maybe let's stay with Creality for another second. So I recently released a video on Creality's new CR6 SE 3D printer, which is the big Kickstarter printer that gathered more than $4 million on Kickstarter. Yeah. And one of the things that I found really interesting and I really like to see on one of those machines was the strain gauge leveling sensor. So where the nozzle physically touches the print bed, deforms a part in the print head, and that deformation is sensed by a strain gauge, and therefore it knows that it touched the bed. Has the advantages that you directly measure the height of your bed and not at a different location with a different probe or something like that. So it makes things a bit easier, also has some other problems. But anyways, the thing is that somebody wrote me an email that there is a patent from a German company called Conrad Electronics, more or less the biggest German electronics reseller, that there is a patent on, a leveling sensor using strain gauges, which was really interesting, and I wasn't aware of that patent. And the question that I have is if that could be affecting selling that specific 3D printer here in Germany or here in the EU. I think it's only they only have applied for that in the EU. Let me check that again. Yeah, I think it's a European patent.
EP.
Yeah.
Looks like it, yeah. So yeah, this is from 2013, 2014, that area. Wait, but priority application filed in 2014 and then granted in 2018 and published in 2018. That's a B1. Okay, so that's a revision on that patent. So expiration is going to be 2034. 3D printing and patents, man. It's a long-lasting hate story. You guys are probably all familiar with the fundamental 3D printing FDM patent that expired in 2000 and something, 2008-ish, which then kicked off Adrian Boyer's team, thinking, hey, we can do this now. We don't have to worry about patents now, and basically kicked off this entire 3D printing thing. So does this restrict Creality from selling a printer with that feature in the EU? Probably.
Could be if Conrad Electronics is really using that to, if they're really defending their patent. Sometimes patent applications are for defensive purposes, so you apply for a patent, but patent is expensive, but still you apply for a patent that nobody else can patent it. And if you don't really enforce that, but you could use
that's the noble idea behind patents.
That's the noble idea.
Yeah. So the way I've been explained patents is basically, you try to patent everything. You try to patent the mundane, the obvious, the pre-existing stuff, and you just try to have as many patents as possible. And when somebody comes at you and is like, hey, you're infringing on our patent, you say, okay, well, see, you have 380 patents on your stuff. We have 420. Let's just settle this. Let's just call it even. I'm not going to sue you. You're not going to sue me. And that's going to be the end of that story. So the individual patent, whether that's valid, whether that's even something that's patentable, whether there's prior art, prior invention happening there, that at some point just becomes irrelevant.
Yeah.
Just the pure idea of, okay, maybe this what's the name? This idea of doing leveling on a 3D printer bed with a strain gauge, maybe that's been discussed in the RepRap forums before this thing was even applied for, which would invalidate the entirety of that patent, or at least the part that was explicitly released before that. But at some point, it just doesn't matter, because these patents at time of application aren't checked to the point where it's like, okay, we're making sure there is no prior art. It's just nobody has complained that there is prior art. Because as I understand it, the patent office doesn't actually do much checking. It just publishes a preprint and is like, okay, if anyone claims prior art on this, we'll look into this. But if nobody says anything, it's going to be fine.
Yeah. So,
So,
well, and that would also maybe influence Ultimaker with their piezoelectric leveling system, though I'm not sure if that's also covered in the patent. And also the smart effector that Duet is, for example, selling.
3D. So yeah, the smart effector is using strain gauges directly.
Yeah.
Ultimaker, like I said, uses a piezo element, which is so they're saying a Kraftmesseinrichtung.
Yeah.
So a force measuring device, which I guess technically a piezo is just doing that. It is sensing a force and outputting an electrical signal. So it is a force measuring device in a sense. And yeah, that force sensing or measuring device is just one of the details that are being patented. So just, this apparatus with XY wherein it uses a force measuring device. So if it's not using a then all the other then all the other bits are still valid. I don't know, man. Patents.
It's
don't
just
have to like him.
Yeah, it's just interesting. Well, I was just quite excited that popped up, and yeah, as I said, I thought about if that would influence the sale of that printer. And well, Conrad Electronics, they are a electronics reseller, but they also have their Rank Force series of 3D printers. So they do also have at least a bit of interest in that market and protecting their own developments.
Yeah. So Conrad, overall, I don't have the impression that they're the most noble company out there. Vaterot, who you guys might be familiar with as the company, they're a pretty small company that came up with the Trinamic silent step sticks that have, Trinamic drivers are now used in so many printers. So they designed the silent step sticks, which is the Pololo size module. And, a bit after they released their original design, of course, open source, all of that, Conrad came out and basically cloned them and sold them under their own brand. And then people were coming to Vaterot saying, hey, this thing isn't working properly. And turns out, they bought the fake silent step stick from Conrad. Conrad failed to disclose that this is not a genuine product, and this is instead, or even failed to disclose that this is based on the Vaterot silent step stick, and just made their own thing based on the plans and sold it, basically creating the impression that this was a Vaterot silent step stick. So I mean that's a pretty dick move. And yeah, it came back to Vaterot, where it's like your stuff doesn't work, but it was just Conrad doing a shitty clone. And Vaterot got them to stop selling those for a bit, and then they came right back and started selling them again.
Okay.
So being an electronics retailer, kind of, I guess, gives you special rights, because who's going to fight you? Who's going to take you to court? Who's not going to be bankrupt after taking you to court and losing potentially? Yeah. So that's Conrad. Not a fan of them in general, but I guess if you need a resistor for $2, you can go into the store and buy it. That's the advantage they have.
When I was a small boy, I was always happy to browse through their catalogs for hours and hours.
Sure, yeah.
Those are the fond memories of Conrad that I have.
Yeah, same. But if you look back on it, their stuff was always ridiculously expensive. And staying on the topic of patents and all that, the other thing that came to my mind is where there is actual pre-existing patentage, is the feed belt topic that Black Belt uses, and the White Knight printers, where it's, instead of having a bed on a printer, it's a continuous feed belt that pushes prints out. Now, I'm just realizing that there is a reason that they can get around that. So, as a background on that, there is a patent by MakerBot, now Stratasys, that patented that Thingomatic feed belt. where it was the Cupcake CNC, the original 3D printer that had like a tiny little belt on it instead of a bed that would just eject prints out the front. I think it was like 8 by 8 centimeters of usable build area. Which honestly, for a printer that empties itself, I think is plenty. But still, they patented that, and now the reason why you see the Black Belt and the White Knight printer actually having that tilted tool head is because that doesn't infringe on the patent, supposedly. Because it's not a Cartesian square machine; it is actually angled, and that creates some issues in the processing of parts, but also it creates some new opportunities, and it doesn't infringe on the patent. The way I understand it, again, I'm not a lawyer, I've not looked into this in full detail.
But if you would have a well, I think one of the advantages of, for example, the White Knight's 3D printer or Black Belt or however they're called is that you can't really do continuous 3D printing. You can print a 5 meter long bastard sword.
Yes.
And that can only be done if you don't have this Cartesian system, because otherwise you would be kind of limited by the build area. Then you eject the part and then you start with a new one.
I mean, I guess you could still do it, because a 3D printed nozzle is still has that taper, angle up top. So if you just take your Cartesian layers and you print a taller layer here, and then you just step it down and you split your parts into basically like little columns, where you print a tall one up front, and then you just step it down, and the printer just always goes along the Z, or just has incremental Z axis. Yeah. Do you get what I'm getting at? Yeah. So I guess you could do that. You could still do that.
Yeah.
The way I understand it, it's just a necessity to work around the patent.
Well,
and still, even though it's probably something that Stratasys could go after, they are not. It doesn't look like they're interfering there.
No.
Yet.
Well, there are more and more companies popping up with those Belt 3D printers, and even Creality has shown of a Belt 3D printer, which might become way more popular in the future because they're able to provide those printers at a lower price point. I'm quite excited that they are also going into that direction, but that could call Stratasys to action, because then there is, a market there. There is a big company behind that you would be able to sue. And for the smaller ones, White Knight and Black Belt, they're startups at the moment. There's not that much competition I think you currently have.
Yeah, and as far as I'm aware, Stratasys are not actually using that patent right now. So they don't have a belt printer that's being sold, and the MakerBot Thingomatic doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So what I'm really excited about is what Brook Drum comes up with or ends up releasing, because Printerbot, obviously, Printerbot's gone out of business. Brook has retained the rights to the Printerbot brand, and he's been working on the printer belt again. So I think that's going to be his first product again after getting himself and the. I don't think it's the same company anymore, but after getting himself back on his feet, I think that's the first thing he's going to be releasing as some sort of a product.
Cool. Yeah.
Printer belt.
Fun
times.
Yeah. All right. Shall we continue to the next topic?
Yes. I mean, we could keep ranting about patents, but
since we're not lawyers, it's some of it is always speculation. Just as a disclaimer.
Obviously, and I gotta say, I lack the brain power of actually working through a patent and understanding every little bit and understanding every little implication that the way the sentence has been laid out has.
I think can't be an engineer to properly understand patents, because some things maybe don't really make sense and are just intentionally made more complicated, even though the lawyer is saying no, that's the way how it is really clear in the end. I don't know. I just hate
Worse,
it.
man. Anyways, print settings and print settings tuning. You've got the 3doptimizer.com in here.
Yep. So I wanted to ask you if you have ever worked with services or specific parts or G-codes to tune in specific settings of your 3D printer. I know that in your filler win series, you've been printing like 3 benchies at 3 different temperatures. I think that's already going into that direction. But there have been, especially 3D Optimizer, a service been popping up that have a wizard that guide you through the process of setting up a filament on the 3D printer. So
yeah. So you've basically summed it up. Yeah, I've been using handcrafted G-code for optimizing or finding a set of print settings that works for a filament during fill-wean. But I've not been using like a full-on assisted optimizer thing like the 3D Optimizer, or you've linked another one, which we're going to talk about in a second, I guess.
Yep.
I've not used those.
Yeah. And yeah, as I said, I have been using 3D Optimizer in the last couple of weeks a little bit. It's a paid service. I think they somehow increased the duration of the free trial because not that many were using it. I don't know what really the reason behind that is. But yeah, it's a pretty interesting service. So you set up a material in there, you specify the broad range of temperatures and other settings that are interesting for that material. And then you are guided through, I think it's something like a 10-step process where in each step you print or you download a G-code, which is especially designed for the settings you put in there at first, print it out, and then judge which of the parts that were printed looks the best. And then those settings are then used for the next test again, and you are basically guided through, setting up a whole profile in the end, and it spits you out printing temperatures, fan settings, retraction speeds, retraction lengths, and everything that is usually important for a profile. And it is guided and sometimes helps you set up materials that you're not that commonly using, which is cool. But it is, I don't know. Did you check how much the subscription is?
It's $5 per week.
Okay.
Or $14 per month, or $49 per month if you're a business.
Yeah. And in the end, you can download settings for Simplify 3D, Prusa Slicer, and Cura.
Interesting that it doesn't support. I just lost my window. There we go. That it doesn't support the good old Slick 3R. So it seems like Prusa Slicer is solidly replacing that.
Yeah.
We're displacing that.
Yeah. So
so how does that work? You basically upload. What do you start with?
Well, basically in the beginning, you tell the wizard: are you looking for good print quality or are you looking for better strength? Well, let me just sign in for a second. Let's see if your subscription has expired.
Well, there you go.
You basically select what the aim of the optimization is. Do you want to have better print results or better strengths? Even though I don't know how they judge better strength in the setup process, but I have done it so far for visual quality. Right. You tell it your printer or printer size and what material you're using, and then you go through, for example, in the first step, printing temperatures. You say, okay, the suggested printing temperature is between 230 and 260 degrees Celsius. And then it prints specific models in that range. They don't take a lot of time to print. They're pretty flat. And then you get kind of a matrix of print results out. There are some pretty pictures on their website, and you choose the one that looks the best. And then you go to the next setting. And you are not only tuning one setting at a time. So for example, for printing temperature, you test printing temperature and printing speed, and which combination of those two seems to be the best for the material.
Right. So you always start from scratch. You don't start with a profile that you say is okay for you. Instead, you really have a bone stock profile that you start with.
Exactly. And you're not putting any STL models or something like that in your slicer. They pre-compile G-code for you. And you download that, you put it on an SD card, and then just print it out. It didn't always work perfectly for me, and I had to tinker with the G-code from time to time. But all in all, it was an interesting process if you're not 100% sure which setting is now causing me problems, or if you just want to know, could I still tune my retraction settings a little bit more to get less strings on my print and stuff like that. So you can try 3D Optimizer, but then there is also Carl wrote me an email, and Carl wrote a software on his own, which is used for calibrating retraction speed and retraction length, which is also just a really simple graphical user interface where you put in general printing settings, and it gives you a G-code in the end that you print out, and then you have a tower and judge which section of that tower looks the best, and that should be the perfect settings for your retraction speed and your retraction length. I haven't tried out Carl's program yet, but it also looks quite usable, and I really like the idea about a structured approach, like a design of experiments approach for tuning and settings, because tuning one parameter at a time often doesn't, lead you to the perfect result.
Yeah. Now, looking at the test they're doing and the way it's laid out, it doesn't seem like a particularly complex system to set up. Like I feel like somebody with a bit of programming experience could set this entire thing up in 2 days. Of course, 3D Optimizer, I guess, is the first one who's doing this, but I'm surely expecting that there are going to be others that maybe even publish this as an open source Python script or something. But for the time being, we have 3D Optimizer. So yeah, in the end, you actually get a profile for your slicer. Is that something that you have to tune for the slicer? Like if you say, I want to tune for, say, Cura, you actually get test prints that are sliced in Cura, or is it just a generic set of prints that you get where a few parameters have changed, and it's basically the same G code?
It's very generic, yeah. It's definitely the same G code, and in the end, they just put those settings into a Cura profile or into a Prusa slicer profile. So it's not slicer specific. So maybe your results will vary a little bit in the end, but I think you're already pretty close, and maybe get an understanding what parameter could influence my printing quality. And this is also something that you could just use to learn. And I have, for example, been using that for tuning in bridging settings for polycarbonate, for example, because my bridges always looked horrible, and I thought, why not try it out and see if it works for my polycarbonate. And for example, you tune the fan setting for bridges and the flow ratio for bridges. You could definitely set that up all by yourself, but this is just straightforward. And if you do all the tests, it basically covers more or less all of the settings that are necessary for a printing profile.
Yeah. And it's, when you're printing, how many are these? 25, so 36, a lot of prints per plate. You could do that. You could surely do that manually, where you just, print a bunch of test files, you change one setting, you print, and just, you print at 200, 210, 220 degrees. But when you have 30 of those tests in one plate, that's going to be really tedious to do manually. again, you could do it manually, but it's just impractical.
Yeah. And well, this is a stepwise process. So you start tuning in a specific set of parameters, and then with those parameters, you go to the next setting, because the amount of parameters you are having, if you would do a full factorial design of experiments analysis, you would need probably millions of test samples to find the perfect one. And this stepwise approach helps you to reduce the number of variables from test to test. And yeah, those are 12 tests in the end. You do them one after the other. I never did the whole set. I just picked out a couple which were interesting for me.
Okay, so you can actually do just the ones that you think you need.
Yeah. It might have been better to do all of them, but I think it might be convenient for some. I don't really like that it's a paid service, but on the other hand, why spend like days of tuning in your settings if you could also just pay $5 and can use their service for a week and dial in your new material. And if you use the free trial, I think you can also, new sets. You can use the service for 7 days with all of the tests. And I think afterwards you can just test 3, or I don't know.
Visual quality target up. So I'm reading that as the paid options also give you testing for strength, or optimization for strength.
As I said, I don't know how they would judge that, but maybe I need to thoroughly try it out at some point. But as I said,
hold on, I gotta vent these headphones open because these are way too tight. These are starting to hurt my ears here. Oh, way too loose now. Goddamn cheap Superlux. I should get some nice.
I can always recommend my Bose QC25s.
Yeah, I mean, I've got the Sonys, the 1000XM3, but I do like my biodynamics that I'm using for editing.
Yeah.
I should just get a new pair for these.
Yeah, so 3D Optimizer, give it a try. If you want to use a more open source and free alternative, check out Carl Johnson's site, also linked down in the description, where he has set up one of those tests for calibrating your retraction settings. I also have, I think, one material I really want to try it out, and I will probably do that the next days. But yeah, it looks really cool, and I think it's worth using because you have this like guided or at least structured approach to tune in settings, and you don't miss anything.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that maybe this tuning is the job of maybe the printer manufacturer or the filament manufacturer if it's like specialty stuff. But we're not there yet. We don't have perfect profiles for every printer. I mean, I keep stressing that good profiles with a printer are kind of super important. But if you don't have them, you can always use use services like that and maybe spend a bit more in the long run. But you're still gonna get good prints.
Well, and that's, as I said, a learning opportunity to just learn what settings could influence the results in the end. And as you just said, buying PLA, even though it seems like that they're using the same base resin for extruding the material, can sometimes lead to really hugely different results due to the pigments that they're using, due to the amount of moisture that they're using. Maybe they are compounding the material with their own 11 herbs and spices. I don't know, but it can be important. Yeah, so sometimes a closed filament system makes sense if you don't want to be bothered with setting up that stuff. And for example, Prusa makes it kind of cheap to, if you have one of their printers, also buy the Prusa Mint. It works perfectly from my experience. Sorry for being a shill again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the guy who has like 30 boxes of Prusa Mint behind me right now. So.
Yeah. No, well, I printed with their PC blend 2 or 3 days ago for the first time, their new polycarbonate material or
Yeah.
polycarbonate blend, and took the material out of the box, put it on the printer, used their profile, and the result was
Urban Gray.
like perfect. And that's just nice.
So you're printing that on a Prusa machine?
I'm printing that on a Prusa machine.
Guessing, yeah.
So sometimes it's worth it. Sometimes people don't want to spend that amount of money, but the Prusa mints, they are similarly
Filament
priced.
itself is actually comparatively cheap, and
Yeah.
it's full 1 kilogram spools.
Yeah.
It's not 800 grams, so pretty low price. What I did notice is that the more technical materials, PC and ASA, do have a lot more diameter deviation than the PLA.
Okay.
Might just be different settings on the extrusion lines, but I mean, it's still not bad. This Urban Gray that I just grabbed is plus minus 0.023 millimeters. And I think the best one that I have might actually be the Miss Pink, is like 0.008 millimeters.
I've been printing quite a lot of test samples in the past weeks, and most of the test samples were printed with generic Hobby King and Spoolworks filament, and then I printed a
Generic Spoolworks, yeah, the premium E3D stuff.
well, yeah, well, but the thing that I noticed, because I was measuring all of the samples, the deviation in the dimensions of the samples was hugely varying with the other brands of materials, and the stuff that I have printed with the PC blend, they were basically all spot on, which is really nice for me. Chill, yeah. Yeah.
God damn it! Why do they keep making good products?
Well, I'm still not a Prusa affiliate, so I can't be a real shill because, yeah.
You're not.
Yeah.
Oh, you're just saying that they're paying you behind the scenes.
Yeah, definitely. Well,
Yeah.
I gotta say that Mikulash sent me those rolls of PC blend for me to play around with. But, yeah.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah, paid by.
At least I disclosed my business relationship.
Yeah. Enough of that for the moment. Yeah, if you guys need to tune in your materials, check out 3D Optimizer and Carl's retraction calibration program that he did. Pretty cool. All right, let's continue with questions, shall we?
Yes. TS 3D Prints has pointed us towards a 3D support interface approach, and I think I've seen this before being shared. That's Sketa Smeta is sharing on YouTube, where he basically uses a regular FDM toolhead. This is a Mark II or whatever, or a clone, I don't know. And he then paints on a black marker. Well, he paints the top of the support material with a black marker. So there's now a very thin coating of that marker ink on there. And apparently that gives him a perfect release for those support and interface layers. Very nice approach, definitely. Yeah, you've got the tool changer. You're the one to try this out.
With it could be working. I could just put a pen on one of the tool heads. Pretty good idea. Would save me working with the PVA material or other breakaway support. I think it's also a really cool approach and does enable you to print really nicely, releasing supports just with a single extruder printer. The thing, again, kind of similar to the thing again is that the implementation in software is the problem. Non-planar 3D printing, that's what I was looking
there
for.
you go, yeah.
So he has linked an article that he wrote in the Prusa forums, And he said that currently the G code is still like hand tailored, that on the height where the support is finished, he uses the pen to draw on the interface layer. If you could somehow fool your slicer to with a multi-material approach to use the pen, I think that could be a workaround, or maybe this could be really something that could be implemented in either Prusa Slice or Cura or some other slice in the future. I think it's a really neat approach, and with simple tools could add value to the 3D printing process as it is today. And imagine companies selling horribly expensive support pens with special ink in there for good release between support material and the print itself.
Yeah, the consumables, that's what they get you with. But I really like the approach of just using a marker. Of just having common household items, and apparently these working really well. Now, there's probably implications to maybe it doesn't stick as well as you'd want to for some prints. Sure. Maybe there's better pens to use, different pens, but that's all down to being able to try it out at some point. I guess, as you're saying, that the software support needs to be there. The question is, who would implement something like this when they don't have a printer to support it with? Because now pretty much all the slices, except for, I guess, Simplify 3D, which is, who knows how alive that still is. Prusa Slicer, Cura, Craftware, they've all got a company behind them that sells 3D printers. So they've all got an interest in actually implementing the features that benefit their printers. Like you said, maybe being able to trick your slicer into treating the pen as a PVA toolhead that just prints the interface that is now 0 millimeters thick. That could work. That could totally work.
If that stuff works out, there is is it called Slicer Plus Plus project? Something like that? There is a branch of Prusa Slicer which has really cool features implemented there. So, for example, ironing will be implemented in the new Prusa Slicer version.
Yeah, I was going to say that. That's in the alphas.
But there is a branch of Prusa Slicer where pretty cool features are implemented by the community. And also, I think my gradient infill that I did a while ago is available in there. Well, anyways, if you can motivate one of those guys and just point out how that could be working, this could be a way how that could be implemented in a slicer. And I think implementing that in comparison to non-planar printing, is way easier. So
it almost sounds trivial at this point, because it's really just an interface layer that you add on top of everything else.
So we'll see. I think it's really cool, guys.
Very cool.
Take a look at the video and also the post in the Prusa forum. Maybe somebody's interested in there and can work on that a little bit more. And maybe you can implement the slicing part already with existing software just by tricking the slicer with the MMU approach or multi-extruder approach. Should be working.
Or Cura with the scripting feature. That could be extremely powerful there.
Cool.
All right, next one by Tomasa88, asking about recycling PLA. About Add North, they've got a program for sending back PLA for recycling. Have you tried it, and have you tried to recycle PLA?
Well, I have tried recycling PLA with my filler extruder. It works basically, though I'm not 100% sure if there's a real economic value behind that. Ecologically, yes, it does make sense, but economically, the amount of work that you need to spend sending PLA prints to a company, they need to sort that by color. How can they be sure that you only put PLA in there? So can they sort between PLA, PETG, ABS, whatever could be in there? What else do you have in there? Metal shavings, I don't know. Those could all be a problem for the later extrusion process. Then you need to shred that material down. Then you need to dry it, yada, yada, yada. So
overall, does it actually have an ecological benefit versus just using mass-produced new filament? And is that, if there is a benefit, is that worth the trade-off of having a degraded material? I think that's what it comes down, because I mean the alternative of disposing of failed prints basically is either it gets landfilled or it gets burnt.
Yeah.
That's the two things you get typically, and I think right now in Germany, if you put your stuff into like the mixed plastics recycling bin at the recycling station, that's all going into the incinerator. Being used for energy, it's like burning oil for power, which I guess is better than land. Is it better than landfilling it? Not really.
It is a nice approach. I don't know if I don't know if it's really making technical sense, economic sense, and also ecologic sense, because shipping material out in a container also produces CO2. I don't know.
And I mean, there's been a few companies that have tried the PLA recycling. I guess PETG is really good for recycling because it doesn't really degrade. But there are a bunch of companies that have tried this approach, but I've not seen one of them really take off in a way.
Yes, I have printed a bunch with recycled materials, but those are usually, this is plastic waste that is industrially produced. So you really know which material that was. Maybe it's even from your own injection molding facility that is next door. So you don't have shipping, you have a ton of material. You know that it's good material, you know that it's the right material. It has all the same color, for example, or the same size already and stuff like that. That makes things way easier. So the RPETGs and RABS and whatever you can find nowadays are usually made from, I don't know the proper English term for that, but the material that is still in the extruder screw when you, for example, change materials. So I don't know if you extrude that out or if you just take everything out, and the stuff that is still sticking in the extrusion, around the auger and stuff like that, that is used as the recycled PLA.
Okay, as far as I know, that's being purged out with a different material then.
3DK Berlin, they have, I think, an Ehrmann or some other yogurt manufacturer next door, and they get PLA waste from PLA yogurt cups or something like that they then produce new material out of, or even spools. Yeah,
spools are perfectly good material.
Yeah.
That too. And I mean that the spools are usually marked. Let me just grab one here. Well, interestingly, the Prusament spools are not marked.
They are marked. Outside. Yeah, I've been looking for that for quite a bit. They're marked on the inside. I think they are polycarbonate. I'm not 100% sure, but they are marked.
Right. So yeah, with those, you know exactly what sort of plastic it is, and you get like non-contaminated stuff there. Right. I'm going to let you do the next question real quick. I got to get different headphones because these are really starting to hurt me.
No worries.
Right? Because you're the expert on mini lathing.
Yeah.
Mine is in pieces because the motor is shot, unfortunately.
Yeah. So Copain Jr. is asking, anyone kind enough to tell me where should I look for sources to learn metal lathe or milling? So if you are interested in starting to use a lathe or a milling machine, there are a bunch of resources around that are not just showcasing what they're doing, but they also, well, get into the process of machining. I'm a fan of YouTube, so when it comes to lathe work, Blondie hacks, even this old Tony, well, he doesn't necessarily do tutorials, but he at least tells a little bit about the process that he is running. Then also, I need to remember his name. There's one guy that has been working on mini lathes for centuries, and he has also a really good YouTube channel where he also has a basic series of basic lathe operations that you usually do, and he tells about speeds and feeds and tools that you're using, and just take a look at that. There are also a bunch of books around. There's actually one book that is called, I think, Machining for Dummies or Lathe Work for Dummies or something like that, if you prefer something to read, where you also get information on the whole process, starting what is the machine, what kind of machines are there, what tools are available, and then the different operations that you're doing and how to approach a specific project. So yeah, just check those guys out, and I will also check minilathe.com. How's his name?
Well,
Frank
you looked
Hoos.
that up.
Frank Hoos.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know how much you covered, but I guess two things to add. Obviously for CNC stuff, NYC CNC, great channel.
Winston
also
Moy.
very
Yeah.
Winston Moy as well. Yes. Those are actually pretty similar in what they teach and show. Because they also show you the failures, which I think is just as important as showing the success and the best practice.
Well, and Winston is using more like hobby grade machines. NYCNC, they have their big Haas machines and things like that.
True. Yeah, I mean, Winston Moore is using Shapeoko, Nomad CNC, and the Pocket NC, the 5-axis.
Oh yeah.
E3D have one of those. When I visited them the last time, they had, I think, one of the early Pocket NCs,
cool.
and Sanjay was just like, dude, this thing is just sick. And yeah, I guess nothing beats really being at the machine and being able to feel what the material does and being able to try different things. I think, I know that the question is about manual machining, but jumping into CNC without having machined material with a manual mill or lathe, I think you lose so much of the just feel for what the material does, what your tool does, what it likes, what it doesn't like. So having just a cheap mini lathe, I think that teaches you just a whole lot about how material behaves, and you can then take that into bigger tools and more automated tools.
Yeah, definitely. This is also one of the reasons why I probably won't convert my mini lathe to a CNC, because for once, the pleasure of really working on metal with your hand is something great. And it's a great learning experience. You can show somebody how such a machine works and just say, okay, rotate that dial. And if it doesn't feel right anymore, then it's probably also not the proper way to do it. And just start slow. And mini lathes are not that expensive. Buying some brass and aluminum is also not that expensive.
I actually saw the cost breakdown of what you spent on accessories and tools. Where did you post that?
On my
somewhere?
YouTube video, yeah.
On the video,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. was like, okay, well, I see how you're actually enjoying this a lot more than I did, because you've spent like 3 times as much on that mini lathe than I did, because I really just have the bone stock mini lathe. I don't have the quick change tool post. I don't have a bunch of tools for it. I have like maybe 1 or 2 carbide tools, and that's it. Yeah, but I guess that's a lot more satisfying actually having the proper tools for the job.
Yeah. All right. And
last question for today by Adam Ryan. Can you test printing ASA on the Mini? I guess that's the Prusa Mini and not the Mini lathe. And try to work out if it's safe. And try to work out how to manage to make it safe if it is safe. So I've got the Mini. Oh, I got some filament loaded in. The Mini is behind me. Maybe you can see it in the video. I don't think you can, but I have recently printed ASA on it, which is Prusa ASA, which prints at 260 degrees Celsius, and it printed damn near perfect. It's a bit over extruded, which I'm surprised that it is, but the print itself looks great. It is strong. It worked perfectly. 260 degrees on a hot end that I'm not sure how much of an all metal hot end or a lined hot end it is. I would guess that if Prusa are putting that as a feature into a printer, that they can vouch for it working and for it being safe. But I will still take apart the hot end and actually see how far down the PTFE goes, because it's not very clear how far it actually goes into the heated zone and into or through the heat break. From what I gather is the PTFE actually stops like midway through the heat break, and that means that it's just getting to maybe slightly above half the hot end temperature. So you get like 25 degrees ambient, you get a 260 degree tool head going halfway down the heat break. That should take you to somewhere around 150 degrees, I'd say, which is perfectly fine for PTFE. So you mentioned that it might even be possible to print the PCABS blend, right?
yes, if you check the blog post on the PCABS that Prusa released, they even say that it's possible to print printed also on the Mini and
So
the PC blend.
Possible or recommended?
This means that all of our printers, original Prusa i3 Mark IIs, Mark III, and even our original Prusa Mini can print with PC blend. And well, they're saying that it needs to be printed at 275 degrees Celsius.
Yeah, so the box is 265 to 285.
Yeah.
So that's smack dab in the middle.
So
Okay.
I guess it's not a, well, yeah, as you already said, a total Bowden not a total aligned hot end. It's something in between. If you want to be even safer, I have just seen that Bondtech released a stainless steel heat break for the Prusa Mini that should be more suitable to
Bondtech are doing heat breaks now.
Bondtech.
Interesting.
Doing all upgrades for 3D printers from, I think, do they do nozzles? Yeah, they even do nozzles.
Dual drive extrusion upgrade kit for Prusa Mini. Ooh.
Yeah. A lot of 3D printer accessories. It would be interesting to see how that heat break really differs from the one that is currently in the machine, but they at least claim that this would be an upgrade, making, I don't know, printing those higher temperature materials more feasible or safer, even though I don't think that Prusa would claim that you can print PC, or would their printer allow to print at 275 degrees Celsius if it is dangerous, or it would also block the printer in no time because the PTFE would degenerate and then just generate a big blob of material at the end. So yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at the Prusa Mini heat break. Actually, we'll have that linked below. And it looks like an actual just a V6 heat break. with the M6 thread up top, then the constriction, and then you have the wider. I think this is a 6mm slug that goes into the heatsink. So yeah, basically turns it into functionally, I guess, a V6. But yeah, I'll have to take apart the Mini, because as it looks like it is a pretty beefy heat break. So I've not experienced heat creep with the Mini yet, but I've also not printed PLA in extreme situations where I just let the printer sit for a while and then try to start printing. So far, it's been working well, but yeah, degradation stuff might also come into play at some point. So
Cool.
right. Oh god, that headset change was really necessary. With wearing glasses, you've got the cups of the headphones actually pressing down onto the ear and onto the frame of the glasses, and it's just like this pressure point. It's like I can take it for 5 minutes. No, I can't. No, I can't.
All right. I think that concludes today's podcast. It was again longer than expected, but yeah, that's always how it is.
Yeah, especially when you've got to catch up for
5 weeks,
3 podcasts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's try and get on track more.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for listening and watching it on YouTube. If you want to support us, check out our Patreon pages down in the description. If you have questions, leave them down in the comments or tweet them to us at the Meltzone. And I hope to see you guys in the next one, or we see you guys in the next one.
All right. Goodbye.
Goodbye.